So we're going to take a look at editing photos in Lightroom Classic using the basic panel. We'll start though by just taking a quick tour of the interface in the library panel, so the library module. The library module is basically for organization. So it gives you the catalog over here on the left, which is the Lightroom brain, the database. Folders, which are your computer. And my suggestion, at least as you're beginning this, would be to hide that folders panel. Lots of people get confused between folders here and collections below. Folders are your computer, collections is Lightroom. So what I do on my setup, because I don't use folders in organizing Lightroom, I do a right click in the gray area here to the right of the word folders, which brings up this drop down. And if I left click on folders from here, that'll hide it. I'll do the same with published services. I don't use this, so I just keep my interface simple by hiding that right click in the gray area to the right of published services. From the list that includes published services, do a left click to hide that. So the catalog is here, and then our collections. So again, organizational activities. Other organizational activities on the right here. You can do some edits as far as light and color here, but I don't do them. They're very coarse and they're hard to use, I think, so I don't do them. Keywording, that's something I do on a general basis because it's very time consuming. Each of these photos would probably need a separate set of keywords, or at least one or two that are different. So I try and use my file names that I created in step number 3 of the import process to be specific enough that I can find an individual photo. I'm generally pretty good at remembering when, oh yeah, this purple hydrangea was taken when I did that Sammamish nature thing. So feel free to do this if you want to add keywords to individual photos. It will make your life much faster in finding individual photos the more specific you are here. I found for me though, my workflow, it does not save me any time, and it just actually takes more time. So while we're here, let's switch. Oh, by the way, when you in here in this view, I'm seeing one photo. If I want to see all the photos in this collection or a smaller view of them, that's called the grid view. I can get to that. Below this large photo is a series of icons, and I can get to the grid view by clicking on the one that looks like a grid. So there's all the photos. If I want to see just a single photo in the library view, I just click it twice and it expands to show just that photo. Again, still in the library view, I can go to the next photo from this view using the right arrow. So a photo to the right in the film strip down here below, the slide viewer, I think they call it, film strip. I see that, and I can go to the right or the left just simply using the arrow keys. It's much faster than using your mouse. Again, still in this interface generally, I can resize any of these individual panels. I can make by dragging from the left or to the right. That will make it smaller or larger. The left panel here or the right panel as well. I can make it smaller or larger, which will make my interior, the photo view, larger. Also can do that at the bottom with the slide viewer. You just got to put your mouse over the dividing line. It'll turn to an up and down arrow, and then you can make this smaller and larger as you wish. Everybody likes different workflows, different sizes of things. I tend to keep my film strip pretty small at the bottom, slide viewer, and then left and right are about this size. I don't generally make the top bar view. I don't know if you even can. Nope, you can't. So that's that. If for any reason you ever lose these, there's 4 panels that surround the main panel. So you've got the top is the module, the left panel, right panel, and bottom. If they're ever gone, that might be because you accidentally clicked on these little triangles that point in or out, and then it hides it. To bring it back, I need to click back on that triangle again, and that'll show the viewer. It often seems to happen mostly with the top and bottom as people are either resizing windows or clicking on menu items. So on the top here, it's pointing out, which means it's always going to show it. If I click it once, it will hide it once I take my mouse out of that view. So now it's gone. It saves a little space if you have a small screen, and then put your cursor back in here and wait for it to show back up. Mine's being a little slow. I have an older computer, plus I'm doing a screen recording, so that's why it's taking so long. Anyway, computer's working hard. You can see all the processors up here are working hard. All right, so let's switch to the develop module to actually work on a sequence of photos. So click on develop. That'll change the interface. So the left bar will switch, the right column will switch, and you'll have different sets of controls available to you. Okay, so looking here at this photo, we're going to stay on the right for now. I'll come another time and talk about the left panel, what's going on over here. The main thing to be aware of is the collections. That's how we move around our photos most easily. The top right of the develop module has a histogram. Histogram is a graph that shows the distribution of the tones in your image. Where you see green, if you see that, that means that spike is just the color green. When you see yellow, that's a combination of, let's see, that would be blue and, I can't remember my colors, blue and green. And then red would be the red colors. Pink is green, and it's a kind of a funky thing there. But wherever it's gray, that means there's equal amounts of all three of the reds, greens, and blues. A histogram is read from the left where it's darkest at the blacks to the mids, and then all the way to the far right is the brightest colors, the brightest tones, excuse me. There's this, I use the histogram as kind of a warning, a trip warning. If there's anything that's pure black, I want to try and avoid that usually, as well as I do if there's anything that's pure white. And these little triangles at the top would light up if it was pure white. So that's what it looks like when there's a white problem. And then you'll see, if you put your mouse over there, it'll show you in red where there's a problem in the whites. If you go the other way, just real quick, that's too much. You'll see that I have a warning in the dark tones, the black. There's pure black, and if I put my mouse over it, that should show up in blue, although nothing in this photo really is. So that's the histogram at the top there. Right below that, we get exposure data, which is really, really helpful. We can see what the ISO was, the focal length of the lens, the aperture, and the shutter speed. All right, so the basic panel has 12 controls in it, broken into 3 sections. The top section is the white balance section, WB. That's the color of light. The middle section here is the tone section. There's 6 controls here. Exposure and contrast are the ones you're probably familiar with if you've ever used a photo editing program before. And then you get down to highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. So we have individual exposure control over basically the very brightest parts of the photo, separately from the darkest parts of the photos and the middle parts of the photos, brightness-wise. It's really powerful. The presence section is very much like seasoning for food. It makes it more interesting, hopefully, and better. Also, easy to overdo. So we do want to be a little careful here. We have texture, clarity, and dehaze, which it's easier to show you than tell you those. The vibrance is the richness of the less bright colors, and saturation is the richness of all the colors. I'll walk through those individually in a few moments. Before we do that, though, I do want to use one of the more powerful tools in Lightroom, which is, again, we use it as an organizing tool. And one of the things we can do with Lightroom is label photos, mark them, so that we can easily sort by that marking method later on. So For example, my nature's collection here has 66 photos. There's lots of duplicates. I was making sure I got a sharp photo or changing composition just a little bit. So I just want to find the best photos. I just want to work on just the good ones. So what I want to do is mark the good ones. Here's my method. There's multiple ways to do this. I like this because it's simple and I think most people can relate to it. So I start with the first photo, the photo on the left, far left in the film strip down here. And what I do is I'm going to go through all my photos at once and I'm going to make a quick decision. Is it a yes or a maybe? So I like the photo or I might like the photo, or it's a no. So those are my two choices, yes, maybe, or no. If it's a no, I just go to the next photo. If it's a yes or a maybe, I'll hit the number 5 key on my keyboard, like I will right now, and now that photo has a 5-star rating. That means I like it. That's my method. I like that photo. Or it's a maybe. I'll come back to it once I've narrowed it down. Go to the next photo with the right arrow key. So what I'm doing with my hands is I have my right hand on my arrow keys and my left hand basically hovering over the number 5. So if I like a photo or it's a maybe, I'll hit the number 5 with my left hand, and then my right hand, I'll go to the next photo. No, that's a little out of focus, not quite sure. So if you want to check sharpness in a photo to make sure it's sharp and in focus, you can click once on the photo and that will zoom it in. And then from here you can drag your photo around with your mouse and see if it's sharp or not. I do have sharpness right here, but this photo's still a little soft, so I probably will skip it. So I'm going to click again to zoom back out and just go to the next photo. And then I'm just going to go quickly through the rest of these so we don't take too long. That's a maybe. Maybe. I'm going to check sharpness real quick on this one. You're seeing the loading down there. It's loading the full-size image. A little soft, so I'll skip this. This one's a little sharper, so I'm going to use this. And then I'll just stop talking and we'll just go through this quickly. So I'm skipping some photos. It's a maybe. 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 And then I have a sequence here of some similar stuff, so I'm going to see which one I like better. And sometimes I'll go back and forth, left and right arrow key to see which ones I like better. So I'm going to maybe go back to one of these first ones on this sequence. Actually, I don't know that I really like any of these now, so I'm going to keep going. I look better in real life. Same thing here. Just tree branch, tree bark, see what I got there. Don't really like those. So I'm going to go through the sequence of photos. Let's check sharpness real quick on this one. Not quite, I missed it. Although I got to wait for it to load the full-size image. It takes a moment, especially when the computer's working this hard. Sorry about that. A little soft, but not too bad. I'll hit a maybe on that. Have the succulent. Again, I want to find the sharp one. So I'm going to just zoom in real quick. Well, semi-quick. And then hopefully one of these is sharper than another. It doesn't look like I got any of these very well. That's a maybe, that one. A smaller one that's a little farther away here. Let's see if this one sharpens up a bit. Well, that one does. So we'll go to there. And then I'm going to zoom back out and scoot through these last ones for just a moment. I'm just gonna hit a 5 on one of these, and I know I'll pick the winner just so I remember that I had one in this range. All right. Some woodpecker holes. I skipped a couple, sorry. It's kind of interesting. A bit of moss up close. I missed these as well. Sorry, I went back and forth. All right, so once you're done making a first pass through your photos, here's what I do. I've gone through all my photos, and I've labeled the ones that I like or are a maybe with 5 stars. Oh, I forgot this one. Neighborhood cat. So those that I like or are maybes, I've labeled with 5 stars. Next one I'm going to do is just look at those photos. And the way you do that is just above the film strip is an option for filters. Filters are just show me certain photos that meet certain specifications. Currently it's set to off, so it's showing all the photos. I want to change that by clicking where it says filters off, and I want to change that to just show me the rated photos. 5 stars is a rating system, so I'm going to click on rated, and it will now show me just the photos that have the 5 stars. And you can see that over on the near the left-hand side above the photos. Mine says I have 19 photos of 66, so it's showing 19 photos. There are still 66 photos in that collection, though. I'm just viewing a smaller set of them. So now what I do is I go back through a second time, and I'll quickly now that I have a sense of all the photos that are here, as far as kind of chosen ones, I'll just try and choose the best ones and make a smaller selection. Just the really, really good ones. Ones I think I would be interested in sharing either on social media or to my website. So I'm going to do that quickly. On the photos I don't like anymore, that are no longer yes or maybes, to take them out of this, to turn the rating off, I'm going to hit the 0 key. That will turn the rating off, and the photos will disappear from this view in the sort, but they will still be in the collection. So let's see, which photo here do I want to keep? I'll keep those 2 to start. And I'm going to do 0 on this one. It's a little busier. So that goes out. Now I have 18 instead of the 19 I had. Also going to do 0 here. 0 there. And I'm just going to go through these, and I'll show you where I end up in just a moment. Oh, again, I am using the arrow keys to go from one photo to the next. The right arrow goes to the photo on the right in the sequence, in the film strip, and the left arrow goes to the photo on the left. So I have 2 of these. Which one is better? I'm going to 0 that one. I don't like the composition as much, the shape of the flower. I'm going to keep both of these until I can just spend a little more time with them. Both of the larger zoomed in one. This one's really underexposed. Actually, I'm going to 0 that. Generally, even that one underexposed, I can still easily recover that in Lightroom. And then the what's that called? The woodpecker holes. I'm going to 0 that. It's not super interesting composition there. That's okay, kind of interesting. I kind of have some ideas what I can do with Lightroom to make that more interesting. And we'll go ahead and keep the local cat for now. All right, so here's what I've done. When I've gone through the whole sort, and I didn't do this intentionally, but I did end up with 10 photos still in the that have 5 stars on them. So now I have my ones that are selected. Now that I will invest more time in the basic panel editing these photos. So I'm going to pause the video. No, I'm not going to pause the video. I am going to pause the video here, and decide which photo I want to edit. That can show you most of the functions of the basic panel. I'm in the basic panel. I have my 12 controls that I can do and make changes and edits to my photos. But one of the first things I do before that is I look around the edge of the photo and the photo itself and decide if there's anything in here that is either a distraction, I didn't notice, is taking away from seeing the central subject of the photo. And in this case, I think there are these couple leaves over here and this little bit of red in the lower right are kind of problematic. So what I'm going to do to remove those is use the crop tool. So I'm going to change the size of the box that the photo lives in, the frame that the photo lives in. You turn this on, and by default, this is called the rule of thirds grid in composition language. I like to call it the suggestion of thirds. I'm going to keep this box ratio, the ratio of the width to the height, the same as the original photo for now. And the way I do that is over on the right-hand side in the tools options underneath the crop tool is by clicking on the padlock. And then I'm going to start in the top right and pull down, click, hold, and pull down to get rid of that. And I'm going to keep going just a little bit. So I put the center of the succulent in the right third. I'm a little short on room on the top here, and I've got some room at the bottom. So now I can reposition this in this crop so that we kind of even that up. I kind of like that. And there we go. I'm a little tight still on the right, so I might want to just go a little bit this way. Do I want center align? I think I might go center align. See, sometimes I change my mind as I'm doing these things. No, I want to go right. Let's go right. But I want to go right about here. So not quite to the third line, because that makes this, for my eye, just a little too close to this right edge. So now this is will be the new cropped version of the photo, and anything that's dark gray out here will go away. So it doesn't really go away because Lightroom works non-destructively, which means we're never going to edit or change the original photo. But it's just going to show us what it's going to look like when we're done. So I'm going to click on the Done button, and now I have a new arrangement of my frame without those distractions that were on the right-hand side. So it's already better and stronger, I think. Part of the reason the photo was taken that way is because my lens would not focus any closer, so I couldn't get closer in camera to do this. I had to do it in Lightroom. One of the ways I tend to take photos now is thinking about how I'll edit them and deciding whether I need to fix this in my camera before I take the photo, or if it's something I can or should fix in software. All right, so now we're going to head down into the basic panel, and I'm going to work from the top down on this photo. Oftentimes when I work on photos, I will work on the biggest problem first, and then whether it's brightness or color or any of the other controls, and then I will come back to the one and then work from my way down. So I'm going to start in the white balance section, the color section. The temperature slider at the top goes from blue on the left to orange on the right. And as you can see, it gets pretty crazy pretty fast. So especially if you're working on JPEG files, you don't want to go, in my opinion, very far away from 0, because left or right from there, because it gets pretty much to look like a special effect very quickly. So in this photo, I'm just watching my screen. I'm going a little towards the orange side, the warmer side to the right. So I'm at about +12. The tint is green on the left, pink on the right, and I'm going to go a little towards the green. There's a lot of green in this photo already, so I'm going to work with that. About -15 or 16. The exposure slider in the tone section will work our way down from the top there. Exposure is, if you go to the left, it gets darker, very, very dark, all the way to the left. If I go to the right, it gets very, very bright. So for this one, I'm going to go, oops, sorry, I keep clicking the wrong thing. I'm going to go just a little, well, actually I don't think I need anything on exposure. The exposure is pretty good on this, and I'll tell you why because I'm going to make some changes down here in the next section. For now, I'm going to leave exposure alone. I am going to turn the contrast up. Contrast, if you turn it up all the way, you can see the colors get richer, gets more dramatic. The brights get brighter and the darks get a little darker. You can see the histogram is moving as well towards the edges. If you go to the far left, the histogram tends to bundle in the middle, so everything gets more gray. So I'm going to go a little to the right. That's my tendency, somewhere usually between 10 and 20. Depends on the photo. I might add about 20 on this one. Next section down are the highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. The highlights are the nearest to the brightest parts of the photo. So let's see what happens when we do that. If we take it to the right, parts of the photo will get brighter, but not very much. There's not a lot of these tones in this photo, but I'll just crank it up a little bit, about 50. I'm going to go next to whites. I wish they were in a different order by Adobe, but they are not, so we'll just skip. If I go to the whites, you can see that's the very brightest parts of the photo. And if I go take it all the way to the left, it just makes it darker and a little more muted. So I'm going to take this a little bit to the right, and it just brings out some of the brighter part of the green part of the leaves, which I really like. Shadows, if I go to the right, you'll see that the background gets brighter, which I don't really want. I can pull some attention to the flower by taking the shadows to the left, making them darker. Our eyes are drawn in photos to things that are the brightest, and then the second thing they're drawn to are the things that are the sharpest. Blacks are similar, the very, very darkest parts of the photo. So again, in this photo, that's going to mostly be the background. So I'm going to make that darker still, just a little bit darker at about -30. So already we made lots and lots of little changes to the photo to make it a little more dramatic, make it feel a little bit more like it felt when I was looking at it. And that's another way I edit, kind of emotionally. I will edit my photos to have a feeling to them more than beyond just, here's what it looked like. I want it to feel like I felt when I was looking at it, or how I think about it when I'm looking at it now. So that's my goal with editing, kind of an emotional edit. The presence section. The texture slider is going to be kind of subtle. It's a new slider introduced in this version of Lightroom, and I'm still just exactly figuring out how to describe how it works. It's going to bring out some detail in without being extremely destructive. It's a nice and subtle change, but it's a bit of sharpening, a bit of extra contrast. So especially on this photo, it's going to be these little hairy, kind of almost eyelash-looking things on the succulent are becoming more standout. So they're getting a little sharper and more visible. If we go to the left, it just smooths and softens things. So when you're softening, really what it's softening here is the inside of the leaf. So it's akin to like things that are somewhat like skin tone. They will sharpen or smooth. I'll go to about +60 on this and leave it there. Clarity. That is a very dramatic slider. If you go to the right, everything gets crunchier. It's got more impact, it tends to look more mechanical, more industrial. If you go to the left, it again smooths out, feels like a special effect. For this slider, generally on flowers, I'll go somewhere between 20 and 30, maybe 40, depending on my mood or the flower itself. So I'm about 25. Dehaze works similarly to a filter on a camera called a polarizing filter. So it's good for foggy days. It will help reduce fog, believe it or not. It reduces a little bit of glare and reflections, and it also tends to make photos have a little more contrast and a little more drama. So you can see as I go to the right, it's making it look like it was a little bit darker and dramatic day. If I go to the left, it looks like it was a foggy day. So I'll go a little to the right with this, similar to clarity. I don't want to go too much, maybe about 20 on the plus side for this photo. It varies per photo. You have these numbers work for this photo. This combination works for this photo. If I tried it on another photo, it won't look the same. Won't have the same effect. because the underlying tones and colors are different in every photo. The vibrance slider, let's turn that up just a little bit. You'll see what that's doing. If you go all the way to plus 100, it starts to look pretty dramatic. Again, it starts to feel like a special effect, or it's a little too obvious for me. If I go to the left, it's going to pull most of the color out. There's still a little bit of the brighter green stuff, the deeper green, I should say, excuse me, a little bit of the yellow tone. So that's kind of an interesting look, but again, it feels like a special effect, not what I'm looking for in this photo. So I'll turn the vibrance up just a teeny bit. We've already got pretty good saturation and other impact from this photo with the presence section, the texture, clarity, and dehaze. All right, saturation is the last control in the basic panel at the bottom. So if I go to the right, it's going to get super rich in color, and if I go to the left, it will become a black and white photo. This is one way to do black and white. It's not the way I recommend. I'll discuss black and white in a future video in this series, how to make black and white photos using Lightroom. So I'll just go just a teeny bit. On the plus side, again, this was rich and colorful and kind of how I feel about it. So I'll go just about +5 on this photo. +8 is where I ended up, it looks like. So there we go. That's our photo, just changes, just using the basic panel plus the crop tool. So we can see before and after view how it looked when we started and how it looks right now, except for the crop. It doesn't show us before the crop. So the key you use on a Macintosh is the / key. So it's the third row of your keyboard, far right in the main section of your keyboard. It's below the delete key, so the / key. So there's before. That's where we started. It was a cloudy day when I took this photo. It feels that way. The colors are kind of muted. And then if I go after, it's got some more punch, more pizzazz. Maybe a little too much on the vibrance, but again, I kind of wanted to show you what you could do here. So there you go. That's the basic panel. One of the neat things in Lightroom is you have unlimited amount of undo. You can change your mind at any time. So I can move any of these sliders to a different one if I want. I can totally change the edit and get a different mood. Or if I want to, I have other ways I can go back in time, and that's in the history panel on the left-hand side. The history panel has every edit you've made to this photo. So it starts where you imported at the bottom, and if you put your mouse over that, in the navigator just above that, you will see a preview of what that stage looked like. So as you can see, as I'm mousing over these, I'm seeing different views of what it looked like as I was using the different tools. So if you want to go back in time and start from a different point, this is a visual description of what that point looked like, all the way back to import before we cropped it. So that's a short version of the history panel. I hope that's helpful to get you started. The basic version is don't be afraid to play. You can't hurt this photo. The original's still there. If you change your mind completely, you can just click on reset and everything goes back to where we started, including the crop. So experiment and play. A couple other little tool tips here. In each of these sections, if you just want to reset the section, like I want all of the presents to go back to 0. Rather than moving each one of these individually, I can just click twice on the word presents, and they all go back to 0. So now that is not changed in the photo. I'm going to reset that with Command Z, go back to where we were with the edits. If I just want to move an individual slider back to 0, I can do that by double clicking on the name of the slider. So contrast, if I want that back to 0, just click it twice and it's back to 0. And we'll go back to where we were, +19 with Command Z. So just some quick tips for the basic panel. You could do a lot with them. There's a lot more down here. As you'll see, we have all sorts of other options and amazing tools in the toolbar. Lots of things we can do in Lightroom. In fact, I do 95+% of my edits on photos in Lightroom. It's pretty rare that I need to go into Photoshop. I hope that's very helpful. a good start for you to begin in understanding how these tools work. The basic version is using the basic panel is just experiment, have fun, make the photos look the way you want them to feel. Hope you have a ton of fun and enjoy this. If you do have any questions, please leave them in the comments below or let me know by email. Thanks again, and next time in this series will be the HSL panel. HSL. We'll talk about what that does. So until then, bye.